Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good morning. Welcome to Expat in Science. I'm your host, Raju Mandhyan. Here at Expat in Science, we take external views of internal successes by foreigners, expats, and immigrants who have made Philippines their home and are doing good in the Philippines. This Friday morning on Expat in Science, we have a guest from Belgium who's not just doing good in the Philippines, he's doing good in all of Asia. He is the CEO of Imperial Consulting, which represents AMA Management of USA in all Asia, and he's here right across me, and I'll tell you a few things about him. He's a pilot, and he lives in Malaysia, has lived there for 15 years or more, and has been coming to the Philippines for the last 10 years. He's here to tell us and teach us about predictive talent analytics. I have no idea what that means, and we will learn from him. So welcome to Expat Insights, Mr. Jean-Francois Jadin, CEO, Imperial Consulting.
Well, thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about yourself, Jean-Francois.
Well, what is there to tell? I was born a Belgian, studied in Belgium, and was ready to spend a professional life in Belgium in consulting. That was my ambition.
Yeah.
But as I finished my master degree, I traveled extensively, but I'd never been in Far East Asia. And at the time, they were talking about the Asian tigers and the Asian miracle. So I told myself, let's go and see the tigers.
Right.
So I got the opportunity to come for a year in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. I knew nothing about Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur. I had all the prejudices one possibly can have. Landed in Kuala Lumpur, taught for a year, computer science, that's my academic background, and never went back 21 years ago.
Gosh. Prejudices back in the year 90-something or the 80s?
1992.
Wow. And how were you today towards people of different culture or cultures of a different culture?
Well, I suppose when I walk down the streets in the Philippines, people still see me as a foreigner, but I don't see myself as a foreigner any longer.
No more, yeah.
One could say that to some extent I go back to Belgium and I'm a foreigner in my own original country.
Yeah. So 20 years almost in Asia, no?
Yeah.
And about the Philippines, 10 years or more?
11 years now that we set up a business in the Philippines. I'm here 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year. Thoroughly enjoy it every time.
So tell me, before we start talking about predictive talent analytics, which is heavy kind of subject, sounds so digital. Tell me a bit about what you like about this Philippines, the 7,107 islands.
Well, I must confess that I typically come here for business, so I've not seen that many islands. It's still on the bucket list. Go and visit more islands, more beaches, more mountains in the Philippines.
Yeah.
But I've always found the environment very exciting, the culture very rich. Let's not even start talking about food. Belgians and Filipinos share a love for food.
Yeah, more would mean that means you have seen some.
A little bit, yes.
Name one which you enjoy, the food, the fashion, or a fiesta place.
Cebu is one of my favorites.
Cebu, you've been to Cebu.
It's very different to Manila. Mm-hmm. It's a smaller city. It's more laid back. But in general, Filipinos are just so friendly. It's just so comfortable to be here.
And how is the business that you have put up here doing?
Business is good. I mean, I suppose the economy is good. The Philippines economy is doing well, whether you read the local media or the international media. Mm-hmm. I was reading, was it last week or the week before, the Philippines is growing faster than China. I mean, this is an achievement.
Wow.
This is
Wow. I didn't read
extraordinary
that one,
because the economy grows. Was it 7.6, 7.9%? At the end of the day, everybody gets richer. Everybody gets better off.
Yeah.
And we see that directly in our business activity. The mood is more positive. Organizations are willing to talk about development, are willing to talk about growing and finding ways to sustain their growth. We do a lot of work for the BPO industry. The numbers in the BPO industry are extraordinary.
I know, 700,000 people as of now.
And they plan to be 1.5 million by 2015.
I know, that's a year and a half.
800,000 people.
Yeah.
How do you manage in 2 or 3 years of scaling from 700 to 1.5 million?
The 700 has been in the last 10 or so years. Yeah. Huh? So, Jean, describe your business a bit. What services do you provide, and what's the business model?
Well, very simply, we're in the business of enabling people.
Okay.
Of giving people the skills, the competencies, the tools, the techniques, the methodologies for them to be more effective in the workplace and therefore more successful individually and together as an organization. So at the organizational level, it's really about strategy execution. Every organization will have a strategy. You ask a CEO, are you happy with your strategy? Yes, absolutely.
Well, they think, no?
Yeah, and
think, yeah.
They think, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes they can be more. But you ask them the next question, are you satisfied with strategy execution? And the answer is, well, you can't really say no, but you can't really say yes. All the KPIs are not met.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it boils down to people.
Yeah.
People execute strategy. So we're in the business of equipping, skilling people for them to be effective at executing the strategy.
Right. So you just told me that strategy is more in the mind of the strategy deviser rather than the one who executes it, right? So when they say it's good, that means it was more in their head. It was more of a dream.
Well, first you need to dream before you create a reality.
So this new tool, this new resource, technology, what do you want to call it? Predictive talent analytics. That's quite a mouthful.
That's quite a mouthful, and that's quite a powerful tool.
Yeah. So start from square one. Say I know nothing of the spelling of analytics.
Well, I suppose if we separate the three words, the first word really that is central is talent.
Okay.
We all come with talent. And we all have different talent. That is intuitive. But if you go to an organization and you meet a CEO or a CFO and you ask them, what are your assets? They will give you a number. 3 billion, 270 million, up to the 10. It's in the annual report.
Yeah.
And then you ask the same CEO, what is your most valuable asset? Well, human capital, of course.
Yeah.
Everybody will tell you that.
Yeah.
And so far the CEO has got a big smile on his face or on her face, and then you throw the third question, how much of it do you have? If this is your most valuable asset, you could tell me what your tangible asset is. How much human capital, how much talent do you have? And usually you get silence. Best case scenario, they will give you a head count. We've got 2,375 employees.
Yeah.
So you've got a photocopying machine in the corner there that is amortized or depreciated. They can tell you exactly this is worth $2,371.
Right.
But in the office next door, you've got a critical talent, director of sales, researcher, engineer, any position that is critical to strategy execution. Basically, the organization can't tell you what talent you've got there. They just know you've got a person. Can we measure human capital? Can we measure talent? Is the question that we faced. A few years ago, I was in front of the client. We were having a conversation on developing what they call CXO, so their next CFO, CMO, COO. Very large organization, and we put a solution on the table. We were about to leave, and the CEO turns to me and say, well, we've got 200 of these. This is a really expensive development solution. How do we identify the 20 people we will invest in?
Wait, you proposed a solution to what? You said
to a large organization.
Solution for what?
Training and development.
Okay.
So the question is, how do we identify the people that we will develop? It does not happen to me very often. I did not have an answer to that question. And I didn't want to fake it, so I said, well, this is really a good question.
This was how long ago?
4 years ago. Yeah, that was the last time I didn't have an answer to a question.
So now you have an answer.
Well, we
If
went searching for an answer because it was really a powerful question. If you say human capital is your most valuable asset, you ought to be able to measure it.
Okay. Let's pause here. Yeah. We hit the ground running. Yeah. Let's take a little break. We'll come back and talk to you from that point up.
Sure.
Is that okay? So stay watching. We are with Jean-Francois Jadin, and he's talking about predictive talent analytics, and he mentioned a scenario where he needed help, and we'll come back and talk to him about how he survived that situation. I'm Raju Mandhyan. This is Expert Insights. Talking to Jean-Francois Jadin, the CEO of Imperial Consulting, and he is talking to us about predictive talent analytics, and he just finished kind of introducing the subject matter of where talent can't be measured, or how do you identify talent. So Jean, go back to that scenario. Now 4 years hence, or 4 years later, you have now a technology to be able to tell that CXO, was it a CXO or a bunch of C-level executives, how to pick out talent? How do you do it?
How do we do it? Well, that's very simple. Let's imagine you are the candidate.
Okay.
An organization employs you. You are in a critical position. You play an important role in the organization.
All right.
Therefore, success is really valuable. Failure is really costly.
Okay, I get that.
You feel the pressure?
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
Well, we're going to ask you to sit in front of a computer.
All right.
And to answer a number of questions. About 45 minutes, the duration of this show. At the end of that, you press on a button, the report goes out, and we've got your DNA, your behavioral DNA, measured. We didn't take your blood and analyze your blood, your physical DNA, but we've got a behavioral DNA. The first part of what we derive out of that, which is descriptive in nature, is motivational characteristics. What motivates Raju Mandhyan?
You can tell that in 45 minutes after. You can tell that after me sitting in front of a computer 45 minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I will sit down to you and I will put it in front of you, and it will be scary how accurate it is. Even if I'd never met you before, I could tell you things about yourself.
What drives me?
What drives you, yes.
Yeah.
What motivates you or what does not motivate you.
Gosh.
But the important thing about motivational characteristics, motivation, is that it is descriptive. It describes you.
All right.
But research shows that it's
handsome.
not predictive about anything. The second thing that we're going to look at is behavioral characteristics. How does Raju naturally behave if he does not make a conscious effort to behave differently? You can depart from it.
Unconscious reactions.
Yes.
So as programmed patterns of behavior.
Yeah. As Bob Marley says, you can fake it.
Who's Bob Marley?
You don't remember Bob Marley. I thought you were that generation.
I know the song.
You can fool some people sometime, but you can't fool all the people all the time. So there you are. These are your natural default behavior. Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Type of things. Again, descriptive, not predictive of success, which may be counterintuitive. Some people will believe, for example, that to be a good salesperson, you need to be an extrovert. Research shows there is no such correlation. So it describes you. So typically, this has got two values. Value number one, knowing what motivates you and knowing how you naturally behaves, is useful in a context of self-actualization. Because if you know about it, you can do something about it. You can become proactive. If you don't know, really, you are led by the environment. Value number one.
So you're driven by demand and market conditions, yeah?
Value number two, in the context of interpersonal relationships, if you are an extrovert and I'm an introvert, we're very different type of people. So typically we won't be that comfortable with each other because we're just different. If you know about it, and you know that it is not predictive of any outcome, then I'll come some distance towards you, you'll come some distance towards me, and we'll accomplish an outcome together, regardless of our behavioral differences.
So the awareness will drive a little effort. The awareness...
awareness, number one, will create that...
A conscious effort.
You have ownership over it, you can make choices, and thereafter, indeed, you can drive towards the other person.
Okay.
So very useful in itself. But where it becomes to me really cool and really valuable in terms of productivity improvement in an organization is that the third thing we're going to measure about you is your potential. On a range of 150 or so skills and competencies.
How would they measure? What is the unit of measure of potential?
It's a percentile scale, so it shows you where you are in the distribution of a large population. In this instance, over 500,000 gainfully employed professionals.
So it's an average, and you get a moving average compared to others.
It's a percentile.
Yeah.
So the value of that, and it's important to distinguish that it is a measure of potential, not current ability. I could have the potential to be a world-class piano player, but I've never pressed the key of a piano, so I've not actualized my potential.
Given the fact that you need to be skilled up, or you need to be...
And many people, while they are relatively well aware of what motivates them and how they behave, are not really aware of their potential. I always compare it to an iceberg. You are aware of the part that is above the level of the water, but 90 or so % of the iceberg is hidden.
Or they discover a potential, or they discover something that's not really their potential, or they act upon something that's not really their potential.
Absolutely. So they go into a dead end, they learn from mistake, they backtrack, and then they move to the next attempt.
Trial and error.
But especially in an environment like the Philippines, where the concept of phase is important, if you fail one too many times, either you lose confidence at the individual level or you no longer get the opportunities at the organizational level.
That is kind of sad. That's not just Philippines, John. That's all of the relationship-based countries like Asia, China.
Absolutely. So knowing your potential is absolutely critical. If I can throw a question to you, since you are throwing all the questions to me,
I haven't said a word yet.
What do you think is the difference in between people that know their potential and people that don't know their potential?
What is the difference between people who know their potential and people who don't know their potential? Well, people who recognize their potential, that's the first question, employ it towards a purpose. Consciously employ it, intellectually employ it. Those that don't know their potential are like a sailboat, like a bump car.
And the net effect of that is?
Loss of money, loss of face, loss of productivity, and me getting asked the questions instead of you asking me the questions.
Well, research shows in a quantifiable manner that the difference between not knowing and knowing is that the one that knows achieves his or her potential twice as fast.
Or at least achieve success twice as fast.
What would it be worth to you or to any of you on the other side of the camera to achieve your potential twice faster? What is it worth to a company for its people to achieve their potential twice as fast? It's phenomenal.
So this 45-minute test that gives you so much insight, so many insights, so much information on a single person. No? How different is it from every other assessment that has existed in the past? Personality types, behavioral types, how are they different, Jean?
Well, the answer lies in one word, but past that word, I suppose there is a need of a little bit of an explanation. The tool used in order to generate that outcome the body of science behind that is not psychometric, as many of the tests would be. It's not observation as an assessment center or a 360. It is actuarial science. So it is really the same way an insurance company measures risk. Now let me give you a concrete example.
The science you're saying is behind the assessment you conduct or behind others? Behind, so okay,
behind the assessment. So the way to measure potential is actuarial science. I give you an example. Do you take for a fact that typically a high level of cholesterol increases the risk of a heart attack. Do you know that as a fact?
Well, that's hearsay, as far as I'm concerned, because there are other aspects to existence of cholesterol. So I don't know that, no? I mean, you're asking me personally.
Because most people will accept that indeed high cholesterol or the bad cholesterol
generally speaking,
increases the risk of heart attack. If you go to your medical practitioner or if you go to the medical profession and you ask them why, actually they don't know. Science has not identified what is the link. Why when I is higher, typically the other one is higher. The only reason they know that is because insurance companies told them. Because they know that from the claims they pay, from people that died of a heart attack, typically at a higher level of cholesterol. That is what actuarial science is.
Right.
Though a very large number over a very long period of time.
Yeah. So I get that. I get that example. So now coming back to the...
That is how we measure potential. So now we have your potential in front of us, from the areas in which you've got the highest potential to the areas in which you've got the lowest potential. What do you do with the highest? Well, first, if you're not aware that you have potential in that area in the first place, typically you're not going to do anything to tap it. Becoming aware gives you the opportunity to tap it. Or you may be aware that you've got some potential on a particular skill, but you see yourself as a 60. And now you realize you're 95, you're world class. Well, prior to that, you saw your maximum potential as 60, so you would actualize it to what you thought is your maximum. Well, your maximum happens to be much higher. If you don't have potential, well, really, then it's not an area to get into, because in other area, you've got potential. So why would you go and struggle somewhere when you can be naturally gifted somewhere else? And that is the difference you were talking about earlier. Let's not go to a number of dead hands before we find our calling, the place we really belong. Let's put the data on the table.
Okay.
And have an informed conversation about where we best fit.
So now people who are using this technology, what do you call it?
Predictive Talent Analytics.
PTA? That's it? Is there a company it represents or something? You can go ahead and mention company.
Well, the provider we use for that purpose is a company in Dayton, Ohio, in the U.S. called Shelly.
So people who employ this, companies who employ this, how are they acquiring the services? How much are they investing in it? And how long are they, in what areas are they using this? In recruitment, in building capabilities, or...
Well, typically in 6 different areas. The first application, and I need to give you a little bit more before we get to that. Once you measure potential on skills, you can also identify which competencies are predictive for success in a given job. And therefore, you can predict who will be successful in a job. And one needs to realize that critical positions in organizations are what is called specialist rather than generalist. Many times we would believe that if you've got potential for leadership, you've got potential for any leadership position.
Right.
Well, if you need brain surgery, do you want a brain surgeon or an orthopedic surgeon to operate you on your brain?
Depending on circumstances, if the brain
You'd rather
surgeon is
have
not
a brain
available.
surgeon, isn't it? If you want to build a bridge, do you want a civil engineer or do you want a chemical engineer? So in these areas, we accept the concept of specialist. In leadership, we make the mistake somehow to believe that a leader is a leader is a leader.
Right,
well, for example,
right.
the competencies that are predictive of success to be a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, and the competencies that are predictive of success to be a CFO, Chief Financial Officer, have no overlap whatsoever.
I get it.
And usually...
This sounds very dangerous. It sounds like very dangerous stuff, you know. And I don't know how effective it is, how correct it is, you know, in terms of your output. Because if you say people move around as bump cars and sailboats, and then they find their potential and their purpose and they're happy with it. So it's a very organic method, but in your case you're saying it's not organic. We are turning people into numbers, or people's potential into measurable numbers. No? Now, what if your computer comes up with an error, or the person encoding the data is a bit out of sync that day? or the one who's gathering data.
Have you ever seen an insurance company losing money? Actuarial
I've
science
seen,
at
no,
the end
I've
of the
seen
day
insurance
is very
companies
accurate.
shut down. I've seen insurance companies shut down for some other investment.
The science is fairly accurate. Now, of course, human beings are so complex you don't get it 100% right.
Yeah.
But the claim is 85%. And research shows that across Fortune 500 companies, other methods, the psychometric test, the assessment center, the 360, and so on, are somewhere between 55 and 65. So you've got a delta plus of 20 to 30. You make less mistakes. I mean, at the end of the day, it boils down to two things. Never put somebody in a job that shouldn't be in that job.
Right.
That is not a natural fit. Because the cost of having the wrong person in the job is very significant to the company, but also to the individual. So everybody wins by having the right person in the job, number one. Number two, which is less obvious but equally powerful, and therefore a low-hanging fruit, never turn away somebody from a job that should be in that job.
Right, right fits.
So
Best
often
fits.
I get CEOs telling me we cannot find talent.
Right. Oh, we are not.
I always somehow giggle a little bit when that happens and respectfully beg to disagree, and would encourage them to look at an alternative paradigm, and the paradigm would be you don't even need to look outside there.
Yeah.
You have so much talent in your organization today that goes untapped. You're sitting on a gold mine and you're not mining it because you don't know. What are your tangible assets? You know the number. What is your human capital asset? You don't know.
Jean,
So get a talent audit.
Cite me an example of you having employed this technology for a local company in the Philippines. Have you?
Of
Or in
course.
Asia. Could you
Of
cite me an
course.
example of what their situation was and how you provided services and what the outcome have been so far?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a large banking and financial institution.
All right.
One of these really, really large. And let's take an Asia-Pacific example. We put 20 people, senior executive,
Through the assessment.
Through the assessment,
Yeah.
C-2, so 2 levels below the CEO
Yeah.
Asia-Pacific, who had been identified as high potential
And
and
this
were
was-
about to be promoted C-1.
How would they identify the high potential before you
Oh,
came?
the organization
Just
did
organic,
it in
just-
the way
just
it
passive,
used
yeah.
to do it.
Gut,
Yes.
gut and instinct, yeah?
Yeah. And the CEO Asia Pacific had signed off on that. So comprehensive,
That
expensive
means these
process.
people are good.
Not only they are
Signed off.
good, but they are currently high performers,
Yeah.
and they are high potential, and therefore they will succeed one level up. Now, the reality one level up versus where they currently are is a fairly different reality. So we put them through what we call a talent audit. So 20 people tested against a range of competencies and a range of positions, the position that were the target positions. Green is recommended, red is not recommended, and yellow is recommended with concerns if they can
50-50.
be addressed.
So this is post the signing off by the CEO saying that.
Yes.
Yeah, post. Okay, this is level
So,
2.
somehow there was a voice somewhere in the organization
Let
that
me-
was saying
let
we
me run
didn't
them
we,
through
we
another-
didn't quite get it right.
Okay.
And the consequences of putting the wrong people at that level, we've seen in the financial industry what it does.
Yeah.
So we were in front of the leadership team presenting the outcome, and there were 10 red and 10 green.
Wow, no yellows.
Well, a little bit of yellow, but basically 10 were suited green and yellows,
Right.
and 10 were red.
And then what action
So
was
for
taken?
the 10 that were green, we've validated that indeed your processes to identify high potential for these positions worked well, but for the others somehow it was not as effective as it could be. Typically they were biases in your system.
Good face, good height.
And in particular, the next CFO was identified, and our conclusion is don't ever think about having that person in that job. And we sat down with the client and we went through the detail. These
Right.
are the skills that are predictive for that position, and this is the potential of that person. And they started looking at that and say, actually, this is right. We see what it means. So we're not saying do away with descriptive talent analytics typically, but add an additional layer, an additional filter
Predictive, yeah.
that will remove the risk of you putting somebody in a job that shouldn't be in that job, and you taking away somebody from a job that should not be taken away from that job.
Now we're about to take a break. Yeah. Quickly on this little scenario that you explained. Now, the costs of the second level assessment, the predictive, and the costs of them going ahead with the old procedure. How much did they save? Ballpark.
Well, the cost of the assessment is very reasonable. We're talking about 300 US dollars, 12,000 pesos. What is the cost of having the wrong CFO Asia Pacific for a bank? Millions? Tens of millions? Hundreds of millions?
Well, you never realize it because it takes years to figure out. Let's take a little break. Yeah. Then after the break, we'll come back and ask you about how we can use this at places outside of businesses. All right? So let's take that 1 minute break, and we'll come back and talk to Jean-Francois Jadin, talking about choosing and selecting the right talent. This is Expert Insights. Stay watching.
About the lady crying.
Good morning. Welcome back to Expert Insights. We are talking about choosing, selecting, and fitting the right talent into the right job. That's called predictive talent analytics, using the head, not the heart. And we are talking to Jean-Francois Jadin, and he's going to give us one more example, and then we'll go and talk about how we can use this for at life, not just at work. So give me one more example, Jean, besides that banking.
Let's take a personal example. I was debriefing a charming Filipina lady a few months ago. Very successful, mid-50s, HR director Asia Pacific for a Fortune 50 company. And there we were looking at her potential as an HR director. And the potential was really, really low. And yet she had been successful as an HR director for so many years. So there was somehow a disconnect. And I get her to talk a little bit, and I realized that really she worked really hard. And the reason she was successful is because she had worked so hard. And I submitted to her that actually the fact that she had a low potential meant that in order to meet expectations, she had to work so hard. And she saw that everybody else was working equally hard. She did not realize that it was that. So that was a powerful learning. But further than that, she started crying in front of me.
Oh my!
And I don't like to make lady cries. And it was not just one drop. It was floating.
Oh,
so I let it happen a little bit, and then asked her why. And she said, Jean-Francois, I just realized why I have such a poor relationship with my children. Because I was giving so much to my work that when I was coming home at night, I had no energy whatsoever, and I was taking it on the kids.
Taking it out on the kids.
Yeah. So we continued the conversation and asked her, is that what you wanted to do all along? Oh no, when it was time to go to university, I wanted to do that, but my parents told me to do that.
Oh,
so
no.
she was put on a track, and she worked hard in order to meet other people's expectations of what was not a good fit for her, and succeeded by any standard, but at the expense of a good relationship with her husband and her children.
Great.
Rather than going for a passion.
I have two questions for you now. It's coming together for me, And I don't know if you watched the movie Trouble with the Curve. I'm sure you watched Moneyball with Brad Pitt, but you didn't watch
absolutely.
Clint Eastwood, so it tells me your age. I don't know Bob Marley, you don't know Clint Eastwood. Question, So when you take action against this outcome of the assessment, you take action, or the company takes action. What about the systemic impact or effects of that, outside of that? There's this lady who doesn't have the potential, but she's putting in her blood and sweat and succeeding, and people think that is talent or that is potential. But at the end of it, you created something else out of that system. What about that impact? In a larger organization or in a family, what about that impact? Jean, is there any way to manage that, or to kind of, lessen the effect of the negative impact outside of that, if there is?
Well, I don't look at it as action, and you see the word on the screen there, analytics. It's really data on the table. accurate, quantifiable, detailed, granular data, which to me is a foundation for a conversation. It is not the only filter you use. There are many other filters. But it is an additional filter to reduce risk and make less mistakes that can be very costly. But not just that and absolutely nothing else, of course. Your interests are still taken into consideration. The culture of the organization remains important. There are many other criteria. But risk reduction is valuable to organization because mistakes cost money. And the more senior, the more critical the position, the more expensive the mistakes. So if you can make less mistakes, you are better off.
How about the impact of societal or country culture, not just the company culture, but societal or country culture, where a person of low potential but high connections, a high network person, is useful to the company, but that you can't make that assessment. How about that one? I know you did mention that it's a second stage analysis, not the first one. It's not the decisive factor, but is there a possibility that that can be taken into consideration?
The use is really, I mean, at the end of the day, a tool is available for any purpose. For example, we are now having conversation with a foundation here in the Philippines to apply that to university students. If we say that you achieve your potential twice as fast if you know where your potential lies, how valuable would that be to be blended in a university curriculum in terms of national development? We say the BPO needs these 800,000 people. I can't remember what the number was, but I once heard that in order to get one employee that was successful in the job, they needed to interview 10 or 15 or 20.
For BPOs? For BPOs?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's approximately that.
So if
it's getting worse.
If you can instead of making it worse, make it better, then you support national development. You create opportunities for the nation. We see senior people in organization that use it for their company coming back to us and say, could my kids take that assessment? I'm about to send my kid to Australia to do a degree in accounting. Could we validate whether accounting is actually a good choice or not? I mean, 2 days ago, I was talking to somebody here in Manila, telling the story of a nephew who did a 7-year medical degree and eventually found out that it was not a good fit and is now studying accounting.
Or took up music.
Well, it's an expensive journey for parents. If you have multiple kids, might as well. You figure that out from the onset.
You're right. You're right. It makes a lot of sense. But I don't know. You didn't see the movie Trouble with the Curve.
I did not.
In that, it's exactly the opposite of Moneyball. And there, this guy, who's a scout for baseball talent, and he's out there. He's getting old, and he's one of those old gutsy feeling type of a person. And there's another one who's doing the same thing, analytics, and saying these are the people who will be good talent for the baseball game. Eventually, he realizes that a certain amount of data doesn't go into the assessment. Data that is unseen or unencoded. Like in his case, it was a sound of a ball that was a curveball, and the batter or the baseball player couldn't hit. But then, again, since you've not seen it, it doesn't make any sense. No? So, Jean, tell me now what lies ahead for you in this country, with not just armed with this assessment, but for Imperial Consulting and AMA.
Well, we're looking forward to continue helping organizations, both multinationals and Filipinos organization. As I mentioned, we are engaging on a corporate social responsibility basis with foundations to impact the education system.
How is that? Can you describe that?
Well, really, we're working with a foundation to bring predictive talent analytics to academia in order for students to figure out where they belong and achieve their potential more powerfully. The third area in which we've always been keen to operate, we did a little bit of work, but there is room for much more, is to bring predictive talent analytics to the government, to the authorities, and help the authorities to tap the full potential of the civil service to ensure the best match within the civil service. Because if foreign direct investment is an important element to national development, the ability for the government to deliver is critical, and if we have a tool that can be helpful
how is that
to
coming
support,
along, and who are you talking to?
it's an intention. We are not having the conversations as yet. But you ask me what would I like the future to be for us, next to what we do in the corporate sector and what we do with NGOs. In other countries in this part of the world, we do work with the government and produce a very interesting outcome.
Mm-hmm. And now Imperial Consulting is in 6 countries?
That's correct.
And how are we doing in each country?
Well, Asia in general is doing well.
Yeah.
India is a fascinating country,
Mm-hmm.
As you very well know.
Yeah.
Multifaceted.
Even currently, as of this week or this last quarter, how are things in India for you?
Well, in India is both very challenging and very rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens in small measures in India.
Yeah, currently things are happening in big measures. Yeah.
But the success story of this year is the Philippines. The economy is really doing well, and therefore it creates needs for our services and opportunities for us to contribute.
All right. Jean, thank you very much for being on Expat Insights.
My pleasure.
And sharing your wisdom and insights. Now, I know that I have not really shown any images or pictures of you. I have a 2-minute clip of you flying a plane. And we'll just show that. You know? And that's the other side of Jean-Francois Jadin, the person who unleashes potential in Asia. So we'll watch that. And thank you very much for being on Expat Insights. If there's anything you want to say to my audience or your friends out there, this is your moment, and that's your camera, Jean.
Well, thank you very much. And if we can help you to measure your potential, to discover your potential and achieve your potential, that is what we set ourselves to do.
Where do they find you? At www.imperialconsulting.com. All right. Thank you very much for being on Expat Insights. Good luck, and God bless you on your journey. So we'll show that little clip where Jean's flying a plane and working with his Filipino partners in the Philippines. So this has been another episode of Expat Insights, and we'll see you next week with either Mr. Raymond Bhagat Singh, the actor, or 2 people in the movie-making business who are also finding talent locally. So good night, mabuhay, and have a happy weekend. And I'm Raju Mandhyan. Thank you for watching Expat Insights.
Jean-François n'est pas seulement un pilote chevronné, il est aussi un businessman de haut vol. Arrivé en Malaisie il y a 18 ans pour enseigner l'informatique, il n'a jamais voulu quitter son pays d'adoption. Il est aujourd'hui à la tête de sa propre société spécialisée dans le coaching en entreprise.
On aide des entreprises, typiquement de grandes entreprises, donc les grandes entreprises multinationales, les grandes entreprises nationales, ou le gouvernement, à développer leurs ressources humaines de manière à ce que la société soit capable d'implémenter sa stratégie. Donc si on demande à un président directeur général, est-ce que vous avez une stratégie? Oui. Est-ce qu'elle est appropriée? Oui. Est-ce que vous êtes content avec l'implémentation de la stratégie? Non. Pourquoi? Au bout du compte, c'est les ressources humaines. Donc comment est-ce qu'on peut développer les ressources humaines de manière à ce qu'elles aient les compétences nécessaires à implémenter la stratégie de manière efficace? On voit de plus en plus, et c'est pourquoi on fait de plus en plus de formations, c'est aider les gens à être plus sensibles aux différences culturelles. Donc plus ouverts. De sortir de ces frontières nationales et devenir un citoyen régional ou un citoyen global.